Sound.
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 Sound. Sound.
Sound.
Found in sound.
The sounds of the forest are plentiful. At any given moment, there are countless creatures communicating through calls, songs, and cries to warn others, lure a mate, or express distress. But what about the foliage around us? Is it in a constant state of communication that humans just can't access?
It's not like we can just hold the microphone up to a tree. Or can we?
Turns out there are a few different devices on the market that can help. I ordered one, which claims to convert the electrical variations that plants create into sound, and even music. The device comes with 2 sets of electrodes, a pair of clips, and a pair of reusable sticky pads. A pair of these electrodes then attaches to a plant. It can be any plant, tree, or even fungi. And the device then runs the signals through an app that notes the electrical variations as a wave graph and translate it into pitch messages that determine the notes played by the app. What you are listening to right now is what notes this Swagala bush made on a sunny summer day. Actually, the soundtrack for this whole season of Found in Sound is scored by plants. The first episode was a lemon balm, the second a pear tree, and upcoming episodes include an oak tree and an arbutus. So what are the electrical signals that are being created by plants? Green Thumb in Nanaimo kindly lent us some space to meet someone who might help us understand.
My name is Hugo Saint-Louis. I am a horticulturist. I work as an instructional assistant, more precisely. My background in plants is basically I've learned to work in gardens a lot. That was my main field of study as a landscape horticulturist, was to make ornamental gardens, landscape. I studied in Montreal and I have moved to Vancouver Island 4 years ago. And I am now working full-time as an instructional assistant. Every day I work with plants, whether it's outside in gardens or in greenhouses. I get to learn and explore the world of plants through my own discoveries, but also through the discoveries of students and their learnings. Yes, that's pretty much me. My understanding of electrical signals in plants is a form of communication. Is pretty much a response to anything that's happening to them or what they're subjected to. So a good example of that is, let's say, if a plant is being cut, well, there's going to be electrical signals that are going to be sent through the plant to create some form of chemical response for the area that it's cut, so that it can start sending whatever chemicals is needed to heal that area or to protect it from predators. Okay, the damage is being done by an herbivore, something that is attacking the plant. There's going to be a response through electrical signals to create pheromones, maybe to attract predators that are going to come and attack the herbivore, either the insect or something larger. It can be a response to a lack of water, let's say. So if the plant is stressed because it hasn't rained in the in a while, or it hasn't been watered, then these signals are going to be used so that they can close the valves that makes the plant breathe, so removes a little bit of the water, and is also going to pretty much open the valves in the roots so that the water can start being absorbed. So everything that is happening to the plant is basically a response. The response is going to be coming from electrical signals, and then after that it's going to be a mix of genes and chemical responses that are going to pretty much, like, the trifecta of plant communications is electrical signals, genes affirmations, and chemical signalings, pretty much, which just works all together to have the plant react and grow properly. That's the gist of it when it comes down to what are electrical signals. It's basically just the plant sending a signal to another area in the plant to tell it to do something because something is happening to it.
Electrical signals allow plants to quickly respond to various stimuli, such as touch, predation, drought, or changes in light or temperature. These signals also play a role in coordinating growth, development, and defense response throughout the plant body. And electrical signals originating in the roots can play a role in nutrient uptake and transport throughout the plant. The signals also work to help plants photosynthesize sunlight to create oxygen and energy in the form of sugar. Electrical signals can also influence the movement of leaves. Growing up, my family had a prayer plant in the living room, and its subtle movements throughout the day would sometimes startle me, when its leaves would catch one another on their journeys and suddenly spring up wrestling. Prayer plants move in coordination with their circadian rhythm in a process called nyctinasty, which causes the plant's leaves to slowly rise during the day and lower down at nightfall. Many plants experience nyctinasty, for example, the closing of flowers at night on this morning glory. Why plants experience this phenomenon is currently a mystery to researchers. Theories range from helping plants remove water from their foliage to these plants just going to sleep for the night. Venus flytraps are a carnivorous plant that uses electrical signals to trigger the closure of its trap on prey. The sensitive plant, or Mimosa poetica, responds to touch with rapid leaf movements, which are also spurred by electrical signals. These electrical signals are what the plant music devices are reading, then converting through their software. How do plants create the electrical signals?
What they are like, usually it's ions that are going to be created in specific molecules in the plants. So as soon as some form of trigger is happening, then you will have ions coming from that area that are going to be sent to another area, or stay to the same area, but just in that case it will just communicate with the cells that are around in that area.
Can plants create different or even happier tones when they are in ideal conditions?
They don't act the same way as we do, right? In a way that's like we are kind of always, actually, in some similar ways, yes. When we are asleep, our body functions are different than when we are awake. And the plants are going to do the same things. If they are under stress, or if it's much colder outside, then you will definitely see responses in the plants being different because of the environment that it's in. And since a lot of their communication or their responses is through cells that are moving from one point of the plant to the other, if there is damage, then that will definitely cut communication.
Regardless of the science involved, listening to the sounds synthesized by trees and plants can be inspiring and relaxing, and even sometimes confusing. I spent months gathering as many sound samples of native and non-native plants in summer and fall as possible. What would it be like for a human musician to remix these sounds?
Hi, my name is Cal Webb. I'm a local musician here in Nanaimo, BC. I've been in Nanaimo since 2008. I've worked on several films as a film composer. I'm also a musician here in town. I play guitar in a few different bands. I have scored several full-length and short films over the last decade, and I'm happy to be working on this project with Laura Kelsey. When Laura first approached me for this project, I thought it was very interesting. It was super different, super cool, and I was really happy to be a part of it. When I first saw the sound files from each of the plants, each one of the plants had a different sound signature and a different sound. Some of the sounds were very dissonant and strange and weird, and some of them were very happy and very flowy. And it was interesting how different plants produce different electrical signals, which you can turn into sound. So Laura called me up one day and said, meet me down at Piper's Lagoon. We're going to be doing a little experiment. She had this crazy contraption with alligator clips, and she clipped on the alligator clips onto the plant leaves and started recording the electrical signal into a tablet, which then I found out she was going to turn into a MIDI file, which is something that you can turn into a musical sound. So when Laura first sent me the sound files, I was able to put them into my digital audio workstation, and assign different instruments to them. I experimented with many different sounds, many different instruments. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work so well, but I was able to duplicate the track 4 times on this particular one. This is the oak tree sound, and assign a bunch of different instruments, and it ended up sounding like this. There were a few different challenges that I ran across, and the main challenge that I had was making these files sound like an actual musical file. Because it's all random electrical signals coming from a plant, it doesn't necessarily translate into something musical right off the bat. So while trying to preserve the integrity of the original files, I was able to manipulate them slightly to make them sound like a song, like an actual musical piece, and it seemed to work out fairly well for most of it.
Except for the Christmas cactus.
Except for the Christmas cactus, which I'll play for you in a second here. It's very interesting. So this track is called Christmas Cactus, and that's what the plant is called. This one didn't exactly work out too well because, as you can see, the file itself contains many different notes right off the bat, and it doesn't exactly sound like it's a usable musical piece. So I'll play a little bit for you. The plant produced so many musical notes in one small little space right off the bat in the intro that it just wasn't usable.
When I listened to the Christmas Cactus track, it just seemed to give more of an eerie atmosphere as a soundtrack as opposed to some of the other options, like the arbutus or lemon balm. It may be that it was the only potted plant I recorded, and perhaps it's unhappy being confined. Or who's to say the tones created by the plants would align with human interpretations of positive and negative melodies? Maybe the Christmas cactus is just singing the joyful anthem of the cacti. But if humans can compare plant signals when they are in stressful environments and then relax them somehow, it would make sense that the sounds they then emit are more positive. We talked to someone who has conducted these type of experiments.
My name is Lauren Bosch, and I'm super passionate about plants. I have a background in herbal medicine, and I love learning from plants in as many ways as I can. I make a lot of plant medicine. I make art with plants, like plant dyeing and drawing and painting and weaving and all sorts of things like that. I've spent close to 10 years working with plants in different capacities, including landscaping, horticulture, floral design and bouquet making, invasive plant removal events with friends. I've worked with invasive species in a lot of different ways as well, including a restoration project I did a couple years ago with some friends using a plant music machine. I was a little bit skeptical to see if something like that would work, so I experimented a lot. And I just think it's really important to learn from plants in as many ways as possible, and one of those things is through sound. Like, we can see how plants are doing visually, and I just wanted to have an avenue to teach people about it, maybe in a different way if visual or books isn't something that they learn from. So the project I did a few years ago was near Howe Sound, and I took some sound samples from native species like red huckleberry and western sword fern before an invasive species removal. They were surrounded by specifically English ivy. So I took a couple recordings of each plant, used a couple instruments just for fun to see what that was like. And then with a group of about 10 or so volunteers, we removed close to 100 pounds of English ivy from the species. And after removal, waited for a similar day I did the recordings from. I took a month to remove the invasive species from the area, and then waited a couple days for the ground to settle, waited for similar weather, and then took some recordings from the huckleberry and the sword fern, and from the exact same plant too, and then compared them back and forth. Also put them on social media and just kind of like played kind of like a guess which one was before and after removal with folks. And yeah, it was like very clearly more upbeat, higher frequency than when the plants were surrounded with invasive species, which was super interesting. You could totally hear the difference audibly, that they were doing better, which was really interesting. I'm sure there's something you could do with that for restoration, but yeah, it was interesting to see what would happen. I've done other experiments just with like moving plants around or the way you speak to them, because your words have frequency, whether like positive or negative. So did that with a couple plants. So it's kind of harder to record, but yeah, it was really interesting. One specifically I found to be really interesting was a couple of friends and I hooked up the device to this tree that was near a road. And we were listening to it. It was really quiet. It was nighttime. There wasn't a lot happening, and it was like we're kind of dancing with it. It was really like upbeat and nice, and a car would pass and it would stop. And it would stop for about 30 seconds after, and then it would start up again. And another car would pass and it would stop. So it was just a really interesting learning experience, hearing the energetics of the plant reacting to something maybe loud and large like a vehicle. And another one was I had the device hooked up to a piece of moss on a tree, and it was doing all right. It ripped off and just started screaming, which is horrible. Yeah, the skeptical mind definitely learned that even though like you know better, of course, we all have a big effect on the world. Just actually hearing it instead of just seeing it was pretty mind-blowing. My long-term vision is to build a holistic healing hub, and it's been a long-term journey, starting in, like I said, Pacific Rim College, studying phytotherapy, which is herbal medicine. And since I finished my schooling, I've been working with a lot of different nonprofits, learning skills and gaining experience to be able to build something like that. My last job gave me a lot of experience with grant writing and project management and things like that. Yeah, right now I'm doing work with a local nonprofit with different herbs and native plants and distributing them and like teaching the community about how they can use the local medicines. And I've been hosting some workshops in collaboration with them on accessible medicine and just really showing folks what they can do at home and how they can incorporate herbs into their diet and topically, and like how everything's all around us and it's not out of reach. The long-term goal would be to, just make medicine as accessible as possible, which would be from growing plants or sustainable harvesting and just being aware of how invasive species have impact and how we can actually, take action ourselves and really learn from the things around us, which I feel is really important.